means everything to me, and it always has. As you can tell from my super cool accent, I wasn't born here in the US. I'm from Canberra, Australia. And I grew up being enamored by classic movies because they always seemed so glamorous, the stories were wonderful, and had these suave men and women at the center of it. But when I went to school, I realized many of my peers had never watched these movies. And I was outraged, so I decided to do something about it, and I started a one-person film club. Friends at this time have likened me to the character Reese Witherspoon plays in Election, Tracy Flick, who some people might call annoying as she goes to become the student body president, but I say she's tenacious and she's determined. I made myself my own film club president badge. I wore it every day with pride, and I'd get up in assembly every week to tell the entire school why they should come to my screenings of Citizen Kane and All About Eve, Rear Window, Breakfast at Tiffany's, and more. The funny thing was, I was terrified of getting up on stage, but I forced myself to do it because I felt like it was really important. My school principal didn't think so. She called me into her office and she asked me not to speak anymore in assembly. But that was okay because I found my calling and I realized that I could do big, scary things when I put my mind to it. Now I am a film reporter living in LA, which basically means I get to watch all the movies. I talk about them on TV shows and online. I rant about classic movies daily, and I get to interview film stars, and I hug a lot of them. Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't so sure about my hugs, but the hugs are my signature move, and it's just a way to break the ice between reporter and star. And again, it's another big, scary thing that I never thought I could do. And now I've had great conversations with pretty much everyone I grew up idolizing, from Clint Eastwood to Tom Cruise, Drew Barrymore, Robert Redford, Julia Roberts, Michael Douglas, Al Pacino, and Oprah freaking Winfrey, who, by the way, gives the best hugs I've ever had in my life. I love what I do, but a few years ago, I realized there's something really wrong with movies today, with women, or more specifically, the lack of girls in film. And it was this 2012 study by USC Annenberg and Dr. Stacy Smith which led me to this realization. They looked at the top 100 highest grossing films in 2012 and discovered that women only accounted for 4.1% of directors. And given that I knew that the average ratio of film school graduates are pretty much 50-50 male to female, I had to wonder, what is happening to girls in our film industry? So from there, I read everything I could, all these news articles with big, scary headlines, and I realized that the problem is threefold. Firstly, like that original study suggests, the lack of women working behind the scenes. Sundance Institute recently did a study and they looked at the ratio of male and female directors in studio films and they discovered it's 23-1. Now that is a huge portion of the population who is simply not getting their perspective told on screen. And filmmaking, like any art form, benefits the most when different people are allowed to tell their stories. And I hear all the time the argument of, well, maybe women just aren't interested in directing blockbusters, or don't you want the best person for the job regardless of the gender? And I say, yes, of course, but the problem is women aren't even getting in to pitch for those jobs. This year, the American Civil Liberties Union has implored federal and state agencies to do an investigation into the hiring practices of film studios to see whether there is any sexist discrimination involved. The second part of the problem is the lack of interesting female characters for actresses to play, and also the wage discrepancies between male and female actors. San Diego State University Center looked at all the top films of 2014 and they discovered that just 12% had protagonists who were female. And it's funny that some of the most interesting female characters we've seen on screen originally started out as men, like Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver in Aliens, and my favorite, Hildy Johnson from His Girl Friday. Now, Forbes magazine recently published their annual list of highest paid actors and highest paid actresses, and it showed huge wage gaps. For example, Matt Damon, who was number 20 on the highest paid actors list, would have been number 3 on the highest paid actresses list if he were a woman. And the Sony Pictures hacks recently unveiled a lot of wage discrepancies, sometimes between male and female co-stars within the same movie who shared the same screen time. The third part of the problem is that women's stories simply aren't being told. Film is such an important medium because it's able to connect with people emotionally through storytelling, and audiences learn about the world through films and they learn about themselves. And if you think about it, you could probably name between 5 and 10 biopics about great historical men, but how many could you name about women? And these problems are important to talk about because it's equality, it's employment, it's about the art form, but it's also about the future generation of young girls. A lot of study has been done into the negative self-esteem effects on young girls when they don't see inspiring role models on the screen, but they see stereotypes instead. They might start out wanting to be president, and then a couple of years later, after digesting a lot of film and movies and TV shows and media in various forms, they decide they just want to be sexy and they just want to be famous, and that's enough. And why is this problem happening in the first place? Because it's not as if people won't go and see movies with females at the center of them. I mean, you just have to look at the box office reports for the Hunger Games series, 50 Shades of Grey, Insurgent, Divergent, Cinderella, and so many more to know that's not true. And it's also not as if women make up a smaller portion of the movie-going public either, because in 2013, they discovered that 52% of all box office tickets sold were bought by women. And it's often the case that women are the gateway to what a family watches, and especially what you watch on a date. I'm sure there's a couple of guys out there who've had to sit through a rom-com or two on a date. As another part of my research, I started to speak with the famous women I was interviewing about these issues. Angelina Jolie said she was really surprised when she discovered how few female directors were working in the studio system. Zoe Saldana said she goes to science fiction to find the most interesting female characters to play, and often, ironically, they're aliens. And Charlize Theron, fresh from her newly iconic role as Furiosa in Mad Max Fury Road, told me how rare it was to find a character which is not just strong, but also allowed to be broken and vulnerable. In short, human. So I've always believed in the power of awareness when it comes to the issues facing girls in film. My friends and family can attest to this as I've badgered them with these statistics. But because they're always surprised, I figured, I've got several soapboxes available to me as part of my job. I might as well start talking about it, put my Tracy Flick hat on and get to work. And the reactions I get from audiences anytime I talk about girls in film range from alarming and offensive to heartwarming and inspiring. So here's some examples of some angry responses I've gotten, and names have been omitted so as to not feed the trolls. And I've also blanked out the curse words because we're classy here at TEDx. The bimbo is only here because she has an accent. She needs to shut the beep up. You're the epitome, spelt wrong, of the Australian beep. I also get called a feminazi and an SJW a lot. Now, feminazi, pretty self-explanatory, but SJW, I had no idea what that meant until I Googled it. And it stands for Social Justice Warrior, which is meant to be a derogatory term, but I think it sounds awesome. I think it sounds like a superhero, right? I am more than happy to reclaim that expression, so please feel free to call me a warrior online. Here are some examples of the sexist or sexual responses I will get. That's a funny looking kitchen, was a comment left on an all-female movie news panel. I also get told to just do porn already. I get ranked on my hotness, or told whether that commenter would like to sleep with me or not, to which I always feel like replying, hey buddy, it's a two-way street. You gotta woo me a little and you're not doing a good job so far. But this is my favorite comment I have ever gotten. Who your tits? And then 2 minutes later, sorry. Because I love the idea that he apologizes for his spelling mistake, but not for the comment. It's like, I'm so embarrassed. I said, who your tits? I meant show. Oh, embarrassing. But then I get some incredible responses from a very open-minded audience who like to hear what I have to say, sometimes debate with me on it, but often they say they had no idea about these issues until I started speaking. You can see I've been sent artwork from all over the world. I've been given the nickname Red Fury, and I look like a superhero in some of these, maybe a social justice warrior, I don't know. But I haven't gotten as much hate as other women have. You know, I know girls who have spoken about supporting women online and have been given death threats. I know girls who have been swatted, and this is a horrible thing. This is when someone discovers your address, they call up 911, and they claim a threat so that a SWAT team will come to your house and pull you out of your house at gunpoint, and that is all to terrify you into shutting up. And that makes me say, we need to talk about this more, and we need more people to talk about it so individuals get less hate. There's no easy fix to the problems facing girls in film, but I do know that it starts with conversation, and the conversation is beginning to happen. Famous actors and directors are starting to rise up and speak out. Gina Davis has her wonderful Institute on Gender in Media. Cate Blanchett and Patricia Arquette used their Oscar speeches to talk about the inequalities facing women in film. Rose McGowan tweeted a sexist casting notice and she started a revolution. Filmmakers Ava DuVernay and Lexi Alexander regularly use their Twitter to talk about the problems facing female directors in Hollywood. When I was first asked to do this TEDx talk, immediately after being excited, I was paralyzed with fear. I thought, that is a big, scary thing. Because when you think of TED, you think of people like Al Gore and Bill Gates and Brené Brown, these famous scientists and politicians and professors and really smart people with big ideas on how to change the world. I don't know how to change this issue, but I do know that it begins with conversation. And the more people who talk about it, the better. So we should all be talking about the issues facing girls in film within our community and also online. Let's get online, let's make some noise, let's make Hollywood take notice, and you can join with me in this conversation by using the hashtag #GirlsInFilm. It is our job to continue this conversation and affect change, not just for the women working in film today, but for all the film geeks out there, and also for all the self-appointed future film club presidents of the world who need some inspiration to do the next big thing. Thank you so much.